things I want to get out of the way first before we jump into like the crux of this video is Charles and I are going to be appearing at the Edmonton Expo on September 16th to 18th, and the Panel 1 show in Calgary on October 1st. I'm going to be putting the links in the description for those shows, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what we're doing at those shows. We're going to have the first 2 issues of Yankee there. The first is going to be a dissection of Canadian immigration over the past 3 years, which if you've been watching, you're kind of familiar with already. Also, the second issue is about Canada's history of genocide against the Indigenous people, which I laugh because both these issues are kind of depressing. We're also probably going to have some cat projects that we're going to be giving and having available there. So I don't want to say too much about those yet because they're not in the bag yet. Haha. And also too, if you stop by our booths and you buy something, you're going to get a free doily and maybe another free treat. Second thing I want to get out of the way is to be sure to like, follow, comment, and subscribe and all that stuff. So, with the recent news, if even more staff being let go from Valiant, DMG, a lot of people have been singing the death calls of Valiant over the last 3 weeks or so. Those of us who've been on board with Valiant since the Dinesh Shamdasani relaunch of the OG 90s have been seeing the slow death of this comic over time, over the past 4 years, but it's accelerated since the Bloodshot movie. So the quality's dropped noticeably, being treated as a property farm for movies rather than good comics, aligned with strong legacy of characters and a dedicated fan base. So sad for many of us, we know what's coming. I wanted to take the time to take a look at this recent age of Valiant and some of the contributions by Canucks creators in empowering a really great age of the Valiant universe. So much good here, and these books have been a lot of readers' favorites over the past 10 years. Well, not everyone here is going to be a Canuck. The teams that comprise these amazing books absolutely deserve celebration. For some of those Canuck creators, this is among their best work of their long careers. I'll likely do some specific videos about some non-Canuck creators as well, because there's just that much good in this company. But before we start this off, though, we should have a note. We should have to note a few people who were behind this, being such a big attractive property for DMG to purchase these characters. The first is Dinesh Shamdasani. Without a doubt, he collected these characters together with because he enjoyed them a lot from that previous 90s iteration. The 90s iteration is looked back on fondly by many who got on the train. While discussions about the big two centered around being a Marvel mark or a DC mark, there was also the same thing with Image versus Valiant. This discussion, of course, culminated in the epic Deathmate crossover. Dinesh saw this as an underserved audience in 2005 and worked to bring us an amazing relaunch of characters in 2012. He got some stellar talent on board. Matt Kindt, the man responsible for the modern classic Mind Management, built so much of this world. He had some amazing series in this era of Valiant, such as Ninjak, Unity, major crossover events like Valiant and 4001 AD. I feel like there's some original work by Kindt at Valiant that also deserves more praise than what it gets. This includes like Divinity and Eternity, which are seriously quite good for some sci-fi antics. Hot damn, there's Robert Venditti too. He opened the line with some Exo Manowar. This comes after his critical hit of The Surrogates and around the time he was also killing it in Green Lantern lore, which I'm a big fan of. Not just Matt and Robert, we also get some Fred Van Lent. I love Fred's work. The Action Philosophers was amazing, and so too was his Comic History of Comics series, which is critical reading for anyone who wants a lesson on the intersection of business, art, and culture. So good. Fred did writing on Archer and Armstrong. Christos Gage was here. Greg Pak was here. Jody Hauser was here and did a stellar job with Faith. James Asmus delivered some of the best comics of the past 10 years with his run on Quantum and Woody. Pete Milligan is nothing to sneeze at as well. And I just want to highlight Josh Dysart's Harbinger. Dysart can do no wrong, in my opinion. He wrote what was one of the most brutal comics to be published in the last 20 years with the Unknown Soldier relaunch at Vertigo. This is seriously one of my favorite comics, hands down. Then he comes over to Valiant and gives us an amazing orientation to a messed up corporate world with some really engaging characters like Peter Stanchak and Toyo Harada. Dysart's Harbinger is one of the standouts of this line. The Harbinger mythos was weaved into the fabric of everything at Valiant that came since. All these creators are doing what they do best and telling engaging stories with the trust of a very skillful editor. It's clear that all of these creators really appreciated Warren Simons. Warren has gone on with Dinesh to shape Bad Idea Comics, but the trust that he had for his creators is very well on display. So Dinesh creates a very stellar lineup. He gets creators who are going to really make these characters their own, and they do. Dinesh tries dutifully to get people on board who may not have been around in the 90s. He tries cool 90s gimmicks level stuff, but not in a cheap way. The web series is one thing, but that gimmick cover of Toyo Harada talking with Sue was super weird and worth picking up just for that gimmick, let alone the story inside. He got on board with the 8-bit craze with variant covers and a playable 8-bit Valiant app that I think is still out there. You can still pick up. He also did that weird Amazon book publisher thing where anybody could essentially write a novel about a Valiant character, and then it would be considered, if Valiant liked it, they would publish it along with Amazon. I even actually did a little story at that time, but I never sent it. I never published it. It was about Exo Manowar, because I'm pretty intrigued by the species of the Vine. They're kind of a cool character to explore. But yeah, delivering us awesome creators with the visible enthusiasm for those characters is just how comic publishing is done. I really hope Dinesh's name is remembered as fondly as like Karen Berger, Jim Shooter, and helping shape this current age of comics. But that wasn't the last. Due to his hard work, he made a set of characters that anyone with money and a desire to make competition with Marvel's cinematic universe would salivate at. So in 2018, the company DMG purchased the characters and company. Dinesh was out. Warren Simons was out. Well, there are some great lineups of creators during that current DMG era. The energy was lost, and all the readers have known it. Once the Bloodshot movie with Vin Diesel tanked, we all kind of knew that the current chapter of Valiant was coming to an end. The current death songs of various YouTubers reflect that very noticeably and kind of prompted this, right? So my long introduction here to the last 10 years of Valiant is meant to lay the groundwork for my exploration of a few creators who helped craft that universe. I hope that many of you new to comics and wanting some solid contained superhero action go back and pick up those trades. I hope that you hardcore aftermarket collectors jump on this as well as and starting putting together your complete collections of this era of Valiant. Those of you who were 90s fans who skipped this chapter of Valiant, I'm here to tell you that you missed out bad. I hope that you give yourselves 10 lashings and know what you've done. You slept, and the ship is now sailing away. We may end up waiting another 20 years for another reiteration of some of those amazing characters. Because of you. I blame you. Those of you who are home peeps have probably figured out who I'm going to be looking at in these videos. I'm going to look at Jeff Lemire's content at Valiant. Much of it is what I would consider to be in Lemire's top 5 works, specifically his stuff on Bloodshot Salvation. But there's a few books that need to be put under the lens of this and that we need to explore. We're going to cross paths with some really skilled artists who breathe gorgeous art into Lemire's ideas. We're going to look at some meta commentary by Lemire, and we're going to look at some creative experiments of Lemire's as well. It's going to be fun. But Lemire isn't the only one that we take a close look at. I also want to look at a little work by Lemire's buddy Ray Fawkes. We're also gonna take a close look at Mr. Kerry Nord's work on Exo Manowar specifically. So I hope you join me for those videos over this what will likely be a 4-video series. So in anticipation of that, be ready for some light spoilers. Here comes a lot of bloodshot. All right. So in 2014, it had been 2 years since Dinesh had established Valiant and brought Valiant back for the rest of us to enjoy. And things were going really well. He was getting a lot of people on board. He was getting nominated for all kinds of stuff. Valiant books were like, they were hot. And Eisner nominations, I believe it even won some Eisners. They won quite a few awards in that first little go there. And so it seemed like a good time for Dinesh to sort of introduce some new readers into this, because I think that core group in the first 2 years was probably people that built-in fandom from the 90s stuff. So he wanted to give us kind of a jumping on point to the Valiant universe, give us a little event that would be a good orientation to the Valiant universe and what was going to be important going forward. And of course, one of the big things about this is that he got to welcome Jeff Lemire to the fold. Who Jeff Lemire is like a superstar writer, as I'm sure you know, not just because of his classic Essex County, which still remains one of his greatest works. But yeah, plenty of other stuff. He was coming off of, or around this time, I believe he was doing the Animal Man stuff, coming into the New 52 relaunch, and Green Arrow at around that time as well, which was fantastic. And it really, like, I think Kindt and Lemire, I don't know, I get the sense that they're probably buddies of some kind. This Valiant little event here, mostly Matt Kindt. I get the sense Matt Kindt's doing most of the writing in the series, but you can definitely see Lemire's fingerprints all over it. And I should mention the Riveras as well, both Joe and Paolo, just killing it. And Paolo, of course, just coming off of Daredevil around that time, in that really classic run there. So here, as you get with like any event, we're super cinematic too, right? And I know there's a lot of criticism right now around like the cinematic approach to comics. It gave us some good things, I want to say, and yeah, it wasn't always perfect, especially like the kind of overinflated storytelling. You don't get that with Valiant comics at all, but some of the actual like formatting of the books definitely have a cinematic feel to them, especially when you look at these sort of widescreen panels. Definitely indicative of the time that it was coming out, right? Like the height of Marvel Cinematic Universe. All right, so yeah, like you get with any big event comic, there's a big world-ending threat, kind of Leviathan, big kind of like big scary baddie, right? Pretty typical stuff, but I do like the design of this baddie and where he shows up. It's the Eternal Enemy, and I wonder how much of a hand Lemire had in deciding what this baddie was going to look like, because look at that spread. Oh, that's hot. That's good stuff. But yeah, this baddie, here he is here. Kind of reminds me a bit of some of the baddies in like Lemire's other stuff. He's definitely got like this, I don't know. It's kind of like a Cthulhu thing going on, or definitely like Stranger Things with their creatures had the same kind of look to them. But yeah, I think Lemire puts a lot of like body horror into his work, and you do see that with like Frankenstein, Agent of Shade, and definitely a lot of the creatures in the red in Animal Man. And although he's not drawing this stuff, although he's not really like drawing any of these comics, I do wonder if he helped out very early on with those artists in shaping what these things were going to look like, or maybe in his scripts he gets really descriptive. Although I don't think that's Lemire's style with writing for other artists. I think he really keeps things tight and pretty brief when he's writing for other artists, and really kind of just trusting them and their abilities. So yeah, not a whole lot of Lemire in the fabric of some of these, but I think in issue 2, we do see some Jeff Lemire art coming into it, being used in some of the storytelling, which was kind of neat. Cool thing to do, I think. Oh, that's my I don't know. They have the same cover, but I get the impression maybe I bought a different printing. Slight differences. You see the color of the font is different, and then of course here the color is different as well. Valiant logo is different. Otherwise, things are pretty much the same. Can't tell one from the other, which happened to me a lot. I like to buy my comics off the shelf. I don't really like having a file at comic stores, and for various reasons. The big reason is I just like the magic of seeing something attractive on the shelf and pulling it off the shelf, which I know makes me miss out on a lot. And then I eventually do open a file, and then I abandon it promptly afterwards, which is like the worst thing you can do to a struggling comic shop. I know, but I just like a lot of control over what I buy. The thing I'll mention about issue... Oh yeah, I said this already. He has some art in these. This was a weird thing that I saw that just jumped out at me. Like Ninjak crawling through the snow here. Ninjak crawling through the snow here, clearly having waited a long time. And he's got a whole layer of snow on top of him. And as somebody who lives in Canada, that is totally the proper use of the proper physics of snow when it piles up that high. I could totally see Ninjak doing this, and it's an awesome characterization of him and his patience in just two very simple ideas, very simple panels. You get some characterization going on there with Ninjak saying absolutely nothing. So good. such a crafty way of giving us some character building. Yeah, here's an example of Lemire's art, and here it's pretty easy to pick out. This is a flashback scene, so it makes sense to have a little bit of difference here, kind of building up this, I don't know, eternal enemy character. There was a few characters around this time. Oh yeah, here's a Switch as well. That's just absolutely stunning. Kind of getting into like Japanese block printing kind of style mixed in there. I believe this is a dream scene for Ninjak. But yeah, where you start to see Lemire really coming out is in this third issue, where his writing is very apparent. And it's mainly in the exchanges that happen between what's going to be his character at Valiant, Bloodshot, and the Geomancer. This relationship's going to have some implications for the future of Geomancer, or for the future of Bloodshot and Geomancer. Especially with Bloodshot and a few of the other series that come after, especially with Reborn. But yeah, beautiful spreads by the Riveras. I think like the cool thing is the exchanges that those two characters have with one another and how they talk to one another. It reminded me a little bit of how this hockey player is having his exchange in Essex County with that kid, and really like it's Lemire giving us that orientation to this world, right, and to this character. Really like short fire questioning that reveals a lot about that character. Not too much about Geomancer, not as much as perhaps she would have benefited from as a character, but definitely focusing on Bloodshot, who, yeah, it's planned that Lemire's going to write Bloodshot for like the next 4 years, which we benefit from immensely. Yeah, that's craziness, hey? What an odd panel. You'll see my books falling apart here. I think there's one other panel. Oh yeah, I just want to mention this too. This is kind of cool. Valiant does this a lot during the Dinesh era. It's the commentaries and like director cuts and process stuff. In each issue of the Valiant, you get a different commentary by one of the creators who contributed to it. And in the third issue, it makes sense that we've got Lemire on board telling us what's what. And yeah, super useful. I would say, like, if you're looking to make comics in any capacity, like these kinds of commentaries are, I would consider like little lessons. You read this book, you enjoy this book, maybe you read it again to pay attention to some of the small details, and then go on to read the commentaries. And just like stuff that people pay a lot of money for to get educated in schools, you can get in these. Not just in terms of the art, but like the process of storytelling. Some things that like Lemire wanted to do throughout this run to really get this character going and use it as a launching point into his series, which yeah was great. And I definitely will be getting into Bloodshot Reborn in a future episode here. Let's just see, what else did I want to highlight for you? Oh yeah. I didn't want to say too many critical things about any of this stuff that I'm going to be looking at in these Valiant videos. Only 2 points that I think maybe could have been explored a bit more is like if this is meant to be a jumping on point for new characters or for new readers, you gotta label some of these characters that pop up. There's a lot of background characters, especially from like Harbinger, that new readers are maybe gonna want to know about. And even some of their flagship characters, I think, don't get a proper introduction to the reader. That's a bit of a miss. Also, too, like this relationship between Geomancer and Bloodshot, it's meant to have implications later, and you can definitely tell when you read Reborn. But I never got the sense of like a terribly deep romance between these two characters, even though in future comics it plays that up quite a bit. Not a whole lot of chemistry there between the two, but hey, what can you do? That's not the purpose here necessarily. But yeah, just again, like absolutely beautiful art and some crazy designs. Oh, check this out. The eternal enemy just absorbing all these different characters into itself. Maybe a harbinger, a sign of things to come, a big beast swallowing these things into itself, just letting them deteriorate within itself. I don't know. Is that DMG? Lemire knew from the beginning. Him and Kindt, they were talking about this. They knew what was coming. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Again, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. My next video, I'm going to be looking at Bloodshot Reborn, all the issues that I have of that. And then, yeah, I think one of the things with Reborn is that we're gonna look at that annual, because that annual is something special. And then, yeah, we'll get into a few of the other Bloodshot runs that Lemire was part of. So stay tuned, folks. See ya.